What's up, Mission? How we doing? Good morning, good morning. Awesome. 9 a.m. crew, like you're rolling in, you're like, what? We got time changes. We're fine. You can't mess with us. We got coffee and everything you need. Thank you so much for being a part of Mission. My name is Mike Hickerson. I'm honored to be the lead pastor of Mission Church. I love our church, and we exist to help people find and follow Jesus, but I just need to clear the record straight a little bit. Jim made fun of me. If you're just hanging out and catching this later, Jim made fun of me about my roller skating ability, and I'm telling you, that is not a laughing matter. I'm embarrassingly good at roller skating. So, I was the king of the rink in Rick's Roll Arena in Owasso, Oklahoma in 4th and 5th grade. Bring it. What do you want? I got it. So I may be overreaching a little. So if you're hanging out in the lobby, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're online, welcome. Man, I love what God is doing in and through the people that make up our church, man. It's so compelling to be a part of. I love everything about our church. We exist, like I said, to help people find and follow Jesus. That's what we're going after together. We want to be people of good news where we live, work, and play. We want to be about that. We want to be transformed people because God has been really good to us, and we want to live transformed lives out in our community. And we think, this is crazy. I know if you're not following Jesus, that's all right. What we think around here that Christians should be the most joyful, life-giving, good news people of any community, any team, any school, any neighborhood. And so we go after that together. Now, you need to know, we are imperfect people. So just turn to the person next to you and be like, he's talking to you. So just go ahead and bump them and be like, we're all imperfect people. There's not one perfect person in here. There's not one perfect person sitting here. I'll tell you that right now. But we serve a perfect God who rescues and saves. And he sent his son Jesus into the mess so that we all would have the right to be restored as much loved sons and daughters. That's our right that we have. And I would want you to live within your rights, that you could become a much-loved son or daughter of the Most High God, and that be the most important thing about you. And now you may not have it all figured out, but God's like, I specialize in rewriting stories and growing people up from the inside, and we have been given everything that we need to live the life that he's called us to. And because it's God that moved towards us, not us moving towards God, that means there's hope for every single one of us that are living, breathing, and sucking air wherever we're watching this. That means there's hope for us no matter what we think about our story. God's not too disgusted with our story to be able to rescue, save, and restore it. And that's what we go after together. So we're in this series that we're going to start today called Breakthrough. And as we're living this life and trying to be rescued, much-loved sons and daughters, there's stuff that we still get stuck in sometimes. So we're going to talk through how do we break through some of the stuff that we get stuck in, like comparison. I mean, you probably do it way better than other people, so you'll be fine. You won't get stuck in this one as much. It's a joke in there somewhere. You'll figure it out. Maybe sometimes we get stuck and we got to break through our comfort because we just go after comfort instead of growth, and those are mutually exclusive. Or maybe some of us, and keep your elbows in, fellas, right now, some of us get stuck in control. And we need to break through our think that we have to control everything and everyone around us. It was a joke, so I'm glad you didn't laugh at that. That would have been very bad. There's some of us get stuck, and we got to break through codependency, where we have over-dependent on some things in our life, and we can't function without that. Or we got to get stuck, and we got to break through this idea of condemnation. We got to get the co out of here, is what we're trying to do for this series. We got to break through the co's in our life, because we got to figure out who God has called us to as rescued sons and daughters, and what that means as we live through it. But today we're going to navigate through comparison. And I'm be honest, I feel like Jody scheduled this one for me to teach because she wanted me to teach this to myself. She does that sometimes. It's really annoying. But this is so hard for me. And I'm not because I'm scrolling social media all day long and be like, oh man, I got to tone it, lift it, buff it. I'm not worried. That's not my thing. That's not my worry. My thing is I am so stinking type A and competitive. And so I'm always trying to figure out if we're playing a game, if we're roller skating, I'm roller skating, man. If we're yesterday I was on the beach with some friends and I'm a terrible Frisbee thrower. When we got married, my father-in-law is maybe the best Frisbee thrower that's ever existed of all time. And I'm athletic, I play basketball and stuff, but I can't throw a Frisbee to save my life. But I worked on that sucker for years, just so I could get to the beach and not be embarrassing, because I'm still so competitive that I'm comparing myself. Am I the only person like this? And you feeling weird about this? I feel better that I can get this out. So it feels way better to me. But I get stuck, and maybe you get stuck, and maybe you're not competitive, but the comparison thing is something that we all navigate, like every single one of us. And I know what we're thinking. We're like, man, am I glad they are here to hear this? Because they need to get way better at comparison, because I am so much better at comparison than they are. They really struggle with it. And if that's you in your heart or soul anywhere, this is not for them. This is for us. Because we all get stuck in what Andy Stanley would call like the land of And we on ourselves and everyone around us. There's a whole bunch of Do you know what I mean by Like pretty Like if you're like Jen Oaks, it's marathon-y Because if you're running a marathon, you have to tell someone about it. So why else would you run it? It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. Haha. CrossFit-y I mean, if you're not taking the picture of it, are you even working out? So I don't even know how they get those pictures taken when they're like working out. That's amazing how they do that. But we get stuck in the land of thin or stronger or smarter or funnier or nicer or more talented We just get stuck in it. And we don't like to point this out on ourselves, but it is something like that comparison stuff will mess us up and rot our bones from the inside. It jacks us up. And then what it does, we start dating and we want them to be more And so then maybe sometimes we get married and we want our spouse to be more So we on them until we can try to get them to be the that we want them to be. And then sometimes we have kids and we all over them. And they live with so much pressure of because we feel like we will be better if they are more Kids, can you just say amen for me real quick if you're in here? So, just kidding. But then if you long enough in the land of it, it feels so normal to you that we're just trying to play the game compared to what everybody else is doing. That then we get stuck in the island, if you're really competitive and dysfunctional, you get stuck on the island of est, where is not enough. You've got to be pretty est, buff est, slim est, strong est, rich est, nice est, retweeted est. Like whatever the est is, you get stuck on that island, and it leads what it can do to a soul, what it can do to relationships, what it can do to our relationship with God, because all we're doing is looking around to see how we're doing compared to everybody else, when Jesus said, I have rescued you, I have called you, I have given you everything you need to live the life that you're called. Follow me, not follow we. So what are we going to do when we live on the island of est? It can lead us to debt, it can lead us to dysfunction. I mean, this comparison trap will mess us up and take us out. So we got to break through from it. One caveat, I absolutely believe in whatever you do, give your very best for it as if you're working to God and not for man. So this isn't, should I do my best? This is, I'm doing my absolute best as if I'm working for God and not for man, but my comparison traps gets me looking to how I'm doing compared to everyone else versus exactly my best that I would want to give to God because he's asked me to, and whatever he's called me to put my hands to. Comparison, there's no win in it. There's a lot of sin in comparison, but there is no win in comparison. And comparison is determining where I am based on where everyone else is. And depending on who you're around, that can give you false information of all kinds. Like if I'm going to go run a marathon, which I'm never going to run a marathon, but if I'm going to go run a marathon and I'm around a bunch of ultra runners, my comparison game is going to be strong. And if I'm going to go run a marathon and I'm around like toddlers who they're barely learning to take a step, you idiot, I could totally smoke you in a race, right? Like the comparison trap will get me because depending on where I am and who I'm around is what I feel like I'm doing good or worse in life. And we get stuck in these two words called if only thinking. Well, of course that's easy for you to say. Your life is perfect. You have no zits, and your kids are awesome, and your social media game is strong, and you're got lots of zeros in front of the period in your bank account. If only it must be nice to have a life like that. Like if only I had that. If only I had as much money as him, as only if I was as smart as her, if only I looked like her, if only my kids were as well behaved as theirs, if only my parents weren't crazy, if only I had in-laws like that, if I could speak, work, cook, travel, think, do, be like someone else, then I would be happy. If I had their life, must be nice, then I'd love God. Because look at all the stuff he's done for me. We get stuck in this if only thinking, and where comparison begins, contentment with our life ends. It's impossible to be content with and grateful for what God has done for us and given us and be comparing at the same time. Does not work. Because we get stuck in that blank, if only I will never be as blank as them. And then what really messes us up as a gift, social media is such a gift, it messes up where we compare our real life with everyone else's highlight reel life. And students, man, there's never been a generation that's had to navigate what you have to navigate in this area. And I'm so sorry, and you guys are going to be way more wise, and you have jacked up parents that have messed you up in the comparison game, but literally you are like, everything you post has to be scrubbed and has to be liked a certain way. That's why Be Real took off, because they're like, can we just be real with it? And then we have to like sanitize our Be Real accounts. Some of us, allegedly. But we compare our highlight reels to everyone else's, or our real life to everyone else's highlight reels, and it will mess us up. Envy is resenting God's goodness in someone else's life while ignoring his goodness in my own. And if I'm comparing how good God has been to how good I think he should have been to me, it will jack me up. Proverbs 14:30 says, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Ecclesiastes 4:4 says it this way, then I observed that most people are motivated to success by the envy of their neighbors. This isn't stuff we talk about at parties, just when we're talking and comparing yards. But this too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Learning to be content is not the achievement of all that we want, it's the realization of everything that we've already been given. I love this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's a long quote, so follow with me here. Jaquel Crow says it this way, we are plagued by comparison. We compare our bodies, our jobs, our families, our skills, our stuff, our intellects, in an ever-increasing desire for complete satisfaction. We want to be attractive, successful, and happy. So we measure ourselves against the people around us, but instead of resulting in contentment, our comparison delivers compulsive jealousy, pride, and shame. We envy those that are better than us, and we look down at those who are worse than us. And once we've started comparing ourselves, we slide into this bitterly insatiable cycle. The more we compare ourselves, the more we need to compare ourselves. It's an addiction. We are on a quest for acceptance and joy, but we are paralyzed by the pressure to look, do, and be better than the other people around us. And because of this, we are distracted from our purpose, mission, and our need to pursue holiness. And this is why comparison is so deadly. So what I'd like to do is I'd just like to take a few minutes here and go, okay, well, what would Jesus say to people like us that don't always get comparison right? And so I started looking back over the last couple months, and I found a question that Jesus asked, and I found a way that he asked it to two guys that I hadn't seen before, and I thought it would be helpful maybe for us to walk through this question together and walk through some of this scenario together. It's two competitive guys and how they compare how they compare to themselves and what Jesus would say right into that situation. So I want to jump in. It's John 20 is where we'll start. This is typically if you're just hanging out, this is sometimes what you would read at Easter. It's kind of like we're going to talk about the fact that Jesus rose from the dead here. So like Good Friday has happened, like Jesus has been crucified, he's in the tomb. But I'm going to sprint through some of those like amazing, historical, awesome details and get to some little windows in here that I want to talk about of two competitive guys. And I think you'll see it in a second. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So Jesus has been dead, he's in the tomb, stone rolled, guards, everything, like followers scattered. The only brave people were the women. There you go. All right, so she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved. I mean, this is why John and Peter, I love you. I'm sure in heaven we're going to have some conversations. But this one makes me laugh so much. Because at first you're like, John is so humble. Oh, he refers to himself in the biography of Jesus that he wrote called John. He refers to himself all the time as the disciple that Jesus loved. And you're like, oh, that is so humble. But if you're Peter, you're like, dude, who refers to himself in the third person all the time? This is annoying. You know, like, so anyway, she came running to tell Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, who's John, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb and we don't know where they put him. Next verse says, so Peter and the other disciple, and Peter's like, just say John, dude. Just say John. It's fine, it's fine. And the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. It doesn't get any more guy than this. So we're running to see the empty tomb of Jesus that's going to completely change all of history and our history. And John is telling this story, but he's going to make sure that everyone of all time knows who got the tomb first and who's faster in the dash to the tomb. And it ain't Peter. That's about as guy as it gets right there. I love it. I totally respect that. So he bent over and looked at the strips of linen lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him. Peter, I just want you to know. Just remember. And then he went straight into the tomb. That's what Peter did. He saw the strips of linen lying there, and as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus and around Jesus' head. The cloth was still laying in its place, and it was separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, John, who had reached the tomb first. He just gave the most historical, important event of all time about that the tomb was empty and the clothes were right there, and we saw it. We were one of the first people to see it, but I got there first. I love it so much. He also went inside. He saw and believed. These are two guys that are like boys of Jesus. And they still want to, they have this land of, I want to be faster, better, I want to have better position. You start reading the accounts, and these people were, these guys were human as all get out, had flaws, and Jesus rescued and called them. And he wants to speak into some of the comparisons. So let me fast forward a little bit. So we've got the tomb being empty. We've got Peter and John trying to figure out life. They haven't seen Jesus yet. So Jesus is resurrected. Let me fast forward a few verses. And the last time that Peter saw Jesus face to face was on the night that he was crucified. And he had denied him 3 times and the rooster crowed. So he had fled in shame. He was trying to do anything that he could. He was trying to get his life back because he didn't know what he was going to do now that Jesus was gone. But Jesus was resurrected. And now he's a little nervous to see Jesus. Because when you failed somebody miserably and that first time you have to see him, you're a little how's it going to go? And this is what happens a little bit further in John 21. It says, afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. So John is telling this story. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. And then, I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, we'll go with you. I just want to stop just for a second there. Simon didn't know what else to do with his life because he thought he had royally screwed up. And that Jesus wouldn't want anything to do with him. So he goes back to his old life and his old way of making money. But he has friends with him in the boat that will say, on your worst day, I'm with you. You got friends like that? When it all falls apart? Wherever you're headed, I'm in there. I'm with you so you don't train wreck your life. Goes on. Said, we'll go with you. So they went out and they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. You know what professional fishermen love? Catching nothing. They love it. They so love it. You know what else they love? Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus, and Jesus calls out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? You know what professional fishermen love? Getting asked from the shore, the people that don't fish. Catch anything? You know what they love saying more than that? No. You know what maybe that fishermen love the most when they don't catch anything? Advice. Check this out. Next, he said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. And when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. And then it clicks in John's mind. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved, sorry, not John, just the disciple whom Jesus loved, said to Peter, just so you know, Peter, I recognize who he was first again. So it's the Lord. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say it's the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him because he would have had boxers underwear on. He puts on his outer garment for he had taken it off and he jumped into the water. He's like, John, you sucker, you beat me on land to the tomb, but I am going to beat you in water. We'll see who can swim faster. That's what he says. Then the other disciples followed him in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore. John's like, it wasn't that far, dude. But I was taking care of all the fish and you were just swimming 100 yards, about 100 yards. Goes on. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there. There was fish on it. and some bread. Let me fast forward a little bit of what's going on. So we got Peter the first time that he sees Jesus. One of my favorite pictures of all the New Testament is Peter feeling like he's full of failure, fully messed up, ruined it. Like the last time he saw Jesus eye to eye, he denied even knowing him and cursed himself if he did know him. And then he's like, all he wants to do is get back to his friend, that he's starting to put the pieces together that Jesus was who he said he was. And he gets back onto a charcoal fire where breakfast is being made, and Jesus just kind of lets him sit in it for a little bit. I kind of like that about Jesus. And then over that breakfast, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, do you love me? And Peter answers, yes, you know all things, you know I love you. And then Jesus will say, I got work for you to do. And Bible scholars, why do you think that Jesus asked Peter 3 times, why do you love me? Because he denied him 3 times a couple days ago, right? So he's fully reinstating Peter right in that moment to say, Peter, do you love me? You know I love you, then I got work for you to do. So Peter gets reinstated. And then right after this is the sneaky thing that I haven't caught and it took me a while to catch this, and I missed it. And it's this: right after Peter gets reinstated on that beach with Jesus, Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. John's here. This was the one, I'm sorry, John, I love you. This was the one that had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who's going to betray you? Like, this is the one that was really close to Jesus. Like, we're boys. And when Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? Like, am I or am I est? Like, we've been racing, we've been following you. Like, he got to the tomb, but I got to the shore first. What about him? Because I'm reinstated, but do you still have a plan for him? And I love what Jesus says here. Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. So let me pause here. Leave this up for a second. Anytime God or Jesus ask a question in the Bible, it's not because they need the information. It's because we do. And this is a question that has eluded me. I never even seen it. And I hunt for questions in the Bible. And so if we're going to get down to what Jesus would say about 2 guys that are comparing themselves and 2 feisty guys trying to figure out how to follow him, but are looking at each other probably way more than they should, like what would he say? And I think it's what he says to me, and I think it's what he says to us, is like, what is it to you? How good I am to them. What is it to you what I've called him to? And it gets to the question in our heart, like what is it in our hearts that gets so consumed and so concerned about what's going on with everybody else and how we're doing compared to everybody else, apart from Jesus just saying, what is it to you? Follow me. Don't look at him. That's no way to run a race. So when we have this urge to be and we have the draw to est, may we be the kind of people that hear Jesus, ask the question, what is that to you? What is in there that is making you go that way and put that pressure on everyone else? You follow me. I don't know about you, but that's been super helpful for me in this last season. Just a couple things I want to pull out, and we'll move on. There's some comparison breakthroughs that I think we need to understand. And the first one is that there is no external answer that is going to help our internal spiritual need. No external or est journey is going to solve the internal need. We've got to ask that question if we're going to break through who or what actually gets to define my biggest worth. Because the answer to that question will set you on a path of breakthrough. Second, comparison either makes us feel inferior to them or superior to them. Neither of which is a part of the Christian life that God wants for us. Humility is this ability to agree with God about who I am. Like, I agree. God says this about me. And I agree with God that that's who I am. Pride is disagreeing with God about who I am. And some of my friends, when they think about who they are, they disagree with God about who they are because they think they're pretty awesome. And some of my friends disagree with God about who they are as a form of pride because they don't think that they're good enough. But we've got to learn to stop comparing and hear Jesus say, what is it to you? I've rescued and restored you. You are a much-loved, rescued son or daughter of the Most High God. Agree with me on who it is and that you are, and follow me. Third, we got to lose the if only and it must be nice thinking. Well, if only I had that life, that job, those gifts, must be nice, must be nice. That Instagram, must be nice that you have time to gram everything. Must be nice. Instead, we got to move to like, I bet it is nice. Good for them. What is it to you? You follow me. That's what Jesus would say. Fourth, run your race. Stay in your lane that God has called you to without comparing. He's not going to ask you to be anyone else other than the you that he created you to be that's surrendered to Jesus. He takes great delight in watching you be you. You would be a terrible me. The world only needs one me. But it needs me to be me, a fully surrendered me. And we are better when you are a fully surrendered you. Just like he created you to be. Run your race. What is it to you? You follow me. So I think what's helpful sometimes is if you wanted to I don't know if you got a mirror, so you probably do. But we use the mirror for a lot of comparing that's not good. And so there's been times, maybe you've heard us say this before, but I think we need to get this on the mirror. Like every day. And students, if you need to help remember it, you can just do that. So just don't tell your parents I said that. But it's like, I got to remember. I got to agree with God about who I am. I'm accepted. I got to get this on my mirror. I'm accepted. No matter how I feel, I'm accepted as a much-loved son of the Most High God. I'm secure. He's not like, I love him, I hate him, I love him, I hate him. Oh, ended up on hate you today, Mike. Sorry. No, I'm secure in our relationship. There's nothing that I could do to make him love me more than he already has moved towards me. There's nothing I could do to make him love me less than he's already moved towards me. I'm secure in my relationship with Jesus. And I'm deeply significant because of the race that he's called me to lead and to run. So I got to look every day and know, I don't need to compare. I got to run this race and know who I am as a much-loved son. And if you're like a real Christian and you can't write those letters on your window or in your mirror, that's fine. We'll give you 3 more. We'll do 3 more. This is like if you're really holy. I am qualified, I am called, and I'm content. God has given me everything I need to live the life that he's called me to. There's nothing I need to do to earn anything else from him that I already have it. I'm qualified. I'm called. He's tapped me on the shoulder. For such a time as this, wherever we live, work, and play, in whatever places and spaces that we go to, you are called into that space as if God was making his appeal through you. And the only you that you can be as a surrendered to Jesus you is the best you for where he has qualified and called you and put you. And then you are learning the power of being deeply content. Because godliness with contentment is great gain. I know comparison can kind of wiggle its way into our hearts and do some stuff with us. It gets into all of us. It got into Peter and John, for crying out loud, right? And they wrote the Bible, So it's going to be in our hearts too. And we've got to start learning, okay, how do we get that out of here? Because that is not the life that God has called us to. And if there's some stuff of looking at other people that has caused us to be trapped, then we've got to learn to break through from it. Why don't you pray with me? God, you are good, and you are great, and you rescue and save. And God, we get so stuck in our own broken nature that wants to know how we're doing and desperately seeks approval, sometimes from all the wrong places, and so competitive, and so insecure. So God, would you just help us, remind us daily of who we are as rescued sons and daughters. And thank you for the way that you speak into Peter and John's life to help us fight comparison on a daily basis. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.